Hi everybody, Julie Mack, Natter with Macca. This is my 4th episode and today I have the extreme pleasure of introducing to you Rupert McCall. For those of you who don't know Rupert, he is an Australian poet of international renown. He's an author of 6 anthologies of verse that have collectively sold over 120,000 copies. Amazing. He's appeared on radio. You might have seen him on several lifestyle shows, as well as commentating for the 2007 Rugby World Cup in France, which would have been exciting for you, Rupert.
Yes.
He's got a great passion for sport. You know, he's played rugby with some of the greats of the game, and his popularity transcends all demographics and all ages. It doesn't matter if he's talking to school kids or corporates or sporting people. He just elevates them incredibly. He was awarded the Queen's Birthday Honour in 2013, and where he received a medal, the Order of Australia, OAM, for his services to the community, and particularly as a poet. A fellow passionate Australian who shares his enthusiasm for our country and sporting greats. Please welcome Rupert McCall. The crowd goes wild.
Thanks, Jules. I know. You've got to imagine it, don't you?
I need
it
to.
Was quite an honour to join that club that I know you're in as well, the OAM club.
It is an honour, isn't it? And it's hard to, like, people sort of go, what's it like? And you sort of go, oh, like, I'm just so honoured, you know, and you kind of feel a bit, you know, just, wow, that's pretty exciting.
Humbling, right? It's humbling. And I feel like I still have to live up to it to a certain extent, you know. So, and that's a good thing. Yeah. You know, it's all right to be acknowledged for the things you've done in the past, but always thinking, well, yeah, do I deserve it? Okay, well, I better prove it that I do, you know, and keep acting positively and passionately.
I really don't think you'd have to try too hard, Rup. You're a pretty incredible and inspiring man. So
thank you.
You leave an incredible impact on everyone that hears your poetry. Run through with us, how did you know that you were even good at it? And when was that?
Well, the story goes back. It starts in a classroom, in a grade 5 classroom on the Redcliffe Peninsula at a little primary school called Our Lady of Lourdes, Woody Point. And yeah, I was in that classroom one day when my teacher rocked up with his kind of big, thick textbook and asked us to open up at a page that when I did that and read what was there, it's destined, you know, to make an impact and change my life. And it was Banjo Patterson, you know, on the outer Barcoo, where the churches are few and the men of religion are scanty, on a road never crossed, except by folks that were lost. One Michael McGee had a shanty. So, you know, that was my introduction to Banjo Patterson, and it lit a little fire inside my heart. It was 1980, so there was something else happening, you know, across the city, 45 minutes away at Lang Park, when Arthur Beetson, you know, led the first Queensland State of Origin team out of the dressing sheds onto the sacred turf. So, you know, it was a great combination of things that were happening in my life as a 10-year-old, which not right then, but ultimately, you know, would collide to provide something that I guess, you know, was my own creation, my own art, you know, my own contribution to the literary world.
So did you start writing poetry from that moment?
I wrote a poem the next year in grade 6 for an Arbor Day competition, which was like an ode to trees, which was very, it was not so good. My mum still has the poem, so, you know, she dug it out at one point and I read back over it, and yeah, I thought that I could probably, you know, improve on it. But yeah, that's where it started. And I think, you know, maybe a couple of years later, I wrote a poem for a Sunday Sun competition, like to enter into the Sunday paper. and you used to win like $5 or something like that if you got your thing published, if you were lucky. But so yeah, I sat down and I wrote this kind of fantasy about Australia beating the West Indies in a cricket game, which just didn't happen back then. we were always beaten by the Windies, and so I dreamt up this one-day game where David Hooks hit the last ball for 6, like to beat the West Indies, and I submitted that poetical entry to the Sunday Sun and won $5.
Good work. Have you still got that original $5?
I don't think so. I think
Straight to the lolly shop.
Absolutely, that's up on the corner store. $5 worth of mixed lollies.
Yeah. Now you went on. You played rugby. Tell us a little bit about some of the people that you played rugby with, and maybe one of your favourite moments in sport.
In my rugby career, well, yeah, I played rugby league for the Redcliffe Dolphins as a junior, and then got on my bike and rode up Scarborough Road to De La Salle. That was my high school, and played rugby there, and then just kept playing rugby after that. So I played rugby at Redcliffe, and still have a lot of friends there, including many from the Fijian community, and then got in the old Mazda 626 and decided I'd go over and play at Brothers at Crosby Road at Albion. So that was 1988. I played a couple of years at Colts. Actually, that was my rugby highlight. 1989, John Eales captained our Colts one rugby team to a grand final premiership over Souths at Ballymore, and it was just such a inspiring memory, for me. We weren't really the best team, I don't think, but we kind of got it all together at the right end of the season. Ealesy was a great captain, and 2 years later he went on to win a Rugby World Cup, 1991, and all the rest of us were at the pub. So I think he had a few more highlights in his rugby career, Ealesy, than I did, because that grand final's still up there for me, number one.
Yeah, and it's all relative, right? It sparks, enthusiasm in you, and you can see that it lights you up, So then you went on, and
it does.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about.
My family's arriving. My family's just arriving behind me, so don't mind that distraction. They just went to get their flu shot.
Oh, right.
Fair enough.
So you then went on and you studied law. Then that later that year, I think it was, that you actually decided, you know what, I'm going to turn writing poetry into a career. Tell us a little bit about that decision making, and did you have to overcome a lot of, mental anguish about that, or, what was that deciding point?
Yeah, it was the crossroads, right? We all reach them sometimes. If we just kind of, rewind very quickly, when I won that Colts one premiership, so that was 1989, and it was about then that, I started writing again. So I wrote this poem, or an ode to the Broncos, for a Triple M competition and sent it in to the station. It was like a supporter facts kind of thing, and it won. So Rod Tiley, our old mate, Mr. T, read it out as the winner one Friday afternoon. And I remember, I was doing weights with a couple of mates of mine who I played rugby with, and Mr. T's reading out my poem and thinking, wow, this is bizarre. And I won, 12 tickets to a home game, which was as good as it gets for me, like back then. A couple of years later, 1991 it would have been, because that's when I turned 21. And those two mates I was doing weights with also turned 21, because we went to school together, same age. And I wrote tributes to them for their 21st birthdays,
wow.
which were really well received, like not just by our peer group, like our friends, but also by grandmothers and aunties, and everybody wanted a copy. So kind of thought that I might have been onto something. That was the year that I finished studying law in 1991, and got a job. So I was an article clerk at a firm called Cranston McEachran & Co. in the city, Charlotte Street, top floor of the Citibank building. And so I did my articles for a couple of years, and it went to another level almost, because, you know, back in the day, it's probably still the case, article clerks, you know, did all the work that nobody else wanted to do. So you'd have to be lugging the files around town, you know, filing documents and courts and serving summons and all that kind of thing. So there's a lot of downtime. Like, you had to sit, take a number and wait. And we didn't have mobile phones to, you know, bury our heads in. So I started scratching out these odes, you know, to my sporting heroes and sporting inspirations in the law courts of Queensland. So that's where, you know, in 1993, Queenslander was born. My ode to the Queensland State of Origin team: beware the wounded Queenslander as he battles for the crown, never write him off, and he will never let you down. So it was good to almost come full circle from the memory of Artie Beats and running out of the tunnel, and then my first big poem being an ode to the Queensland Origin team. And so, you know, I got a collection of poems just as an article clerk. I would share them with my good mate, and you would know him also, Chris White. So Whitey, we went to law school together. He was a Marist boy, and I'm doing a lot of talking here, sorry. But, you know, Whitey would, I'd fax them to Whitey at his law office, and he'd fax them out to all his mates and networks. So that was how things went viral, you know, like back in the day on the old fax machine. But just all of a sudden, you know, I had this momentum, and Roy and HG, you know, read out my tribute to Ian Healy on their show. Tony Durkin published that Queenslander poem in Rugby League Week. All of this stuff was happening. Peter Dick kind of got hold of me, and I was doing a weekly spot on ABC after he discovered me on the Gabba Hill, like, you know, around about, it was before we won the Shield final, but I was being an idiot up there and reciting poetry and singing songs and all that kind of stuff. So I was a solicitor. I became a solicitor in January of 1994. My law firm sent me out into the suburbs to Strathpine to ply my trade, like out in the boondocks. And, you know, some of the law out there, with the greatest respect, you know, it wasn't pretty. There was family law up to my ears in custody battles and domestic violence, restraining orders. And, you know, I learned a lot, don't get me wrong, but I woke up, one morning in mid-1994, and I realised that there wasn't a lot of inspiration in the family law division of the Petrie Magistrates Court. So that was the crossroads right there. And, you know, I retired. I turned left, took the road less travelled, and thought that I had a better contribution to make to the world other than as a family law solicitor.
I think it's a great message, Root, that, you know, when we follow our passion, that, you know, it's really not work, and it's, you know, something that if you're meant to do it, you're going to do it, right? Yeah,
you've got to listen to that voice, you know, the one that that speaks the loudest, and you know, and that inside, and that's not always following the path that everybody expects you to. I think if you understand, you know, what is going to be my best contribution to this day, to, you know, to this life, to this world, and you listen to that voice, and if that means you've got to turn left, well, you know, turn left, follow the path of your greatest passion, because I think that's probably what's going to be most likely to put a smile on your face.
Yeah, well said, well said. Let's jump forward to 2005. It's a pretty special, I would say, a special moment for you. You had the honour of opening the prelude to the dawn service in Gallipoli.
Yeah.
Mate, like, I get goosebumps just saying that. Try and share with us, you know, what was going through your mind in the lead up to that, and then on that special day.
Yeah, we just might have to negotiate the rubbish trucks too as they whiz around the streets here. Anyway, he's gone the other direction. That's good. Now, yes, that was a great honour. And I think I said, you know, humbling in my earlier spiel, and the same thing applies here. So, you know, it's a few books later. I self-published a couple of books, in those early days I was just talking about. And then Green and Gold Malaria came along. I wrote that for Australia Day in 1995. And things kind of went from, a Queensland following to a national following at that point. And, I owe a lot to that great disease, There's a few bad ones going around at the moment, but there's the good one that I can speak of is Green and Gold Malaria, which was my tribute to Australian pride. Great Australians like yourself, Jules, inspired, generation of sports fans and in other senses as well. The Anzac spirit, which we're about to get to, and other things. So I had kind of gone from these 21st birthday recitals to writing and reciting poems that were starting to be well received around the state and country. Stuart Diver was another one. I wrote a poem called The Miracle of Threadbow, which probably is appropriate at a time like this. It was really all about hope, in seemingly hopeless situations. So all of that combined, I suppose, you get the attention of the right kind of people who are organising things like Anzac Day commemorations, and I was asked to write a tribute to the 90th anniversary of the landing at Gallipoli at Anzac Day. Here comes that rubbish truck back down the street. Tell you what, right? You get some peace and quiet on your front deck, with a good cup of tea, and in the current situation of the world. That anyway.
Essential services, mate.
Somebody's got to do that job, right?
Yeah.
Let's just wait for the Brisbane City Council to pass here. It's two bin day as well, so they've got to. Oh, there goes a few bottles. Sorry, the neighbours have been you in self-isolation.
I know, right?
There's nothing wrong with that.
we've had to go and buy the next 2 weeks worth of alcohol twice this week.
Yeah. I know. That's when you really see panic buying. But, anyway, the truck is gone down the street now. So, oh dear. Anzac Day, 2005. When you get asked to write something for a subject like that, it comes with, and I only realised this at the time because it's the first time I think that I felt that it really came with a responsibility. It's like, well, you better not stuff this one up because you're standing on sacred ground and you are paying tribute to truly great Australians. And the poem was written and it had to be fine-tuned and approved by prime ministers, historians, etc. So even just to get the green light through the writing process was a challenge in itself. Anyway, once all the ticks had been placed in the right boxes, we rocked up to Anzac Cove in 2005, and wow, was I nervous. I was so nervous, petrified, and cold.
Yeah.
Because so cold, and I was standing there waiting to be pushed to go up onto the stage, and I must have looked like I was turning purple because somebody from the entourage asked if I wanted to borrow their scarf, and I wanted to say yes, and the word got frozen in my throat. So I thought, wow, how am I going to go here? Like I'm struggling to speak one word. How am I going to do 5 verses? But it's amazing when that moment arrives, and you've stood on the blocks when that moment arrives, and everything that you've probably poured all your time and effort and passion into over the years, you realise that this is where you're supposed to be. And I had my grandfather's dog tags and called them his meat tickets from World War II in my hand. Barney was a rat of Tobruk in the Second World War. God bless those boys. And it gave me some courage, you know, and some warmth. And as I was standing there at that moment, I don't want to make it too kind of, you know, dramatic, but like these are the thoughts I was having. And I honestly thought, like, how cold it was and how nervous I was. And I thought 90 years to the day, there were young Australian kids basically trying to jump out of a boat into the water, you know, and make their way up that beach just to survive. And I thought, I didn't feel so nervous after that, right? So that was perspective just dawned on me. And ever since then, whenever I've stood to make a really important speech or recital, I think about that moment and it puts things in perspective and it calms me down. And anyway, I stood up and it's almost like going into automatic pilot. You know, I just delivered the 5 verses and I'm looking down. There's 20,000 people there almost, and lucky it was dark. I couldn't see most of them, but down in front, like in the mosh pit, you're always looking for a face, right, to get encouragement when you're performing, or I do. And there's John Howard. No, it was reassuring because he'd approved my words. Helen Clark was the New Zealand Prime Minister. She was there. I saw General Cosgrove. Now, that gave me a little bit of a pump up, seeing the general there. But then I had this, you know, I suppose, the moment that you kind of need when everything's so tense and serious. And I'm not sure whether it was because the spotlight was kind of bouncing off his ears, but sitting right beside them was Prince Charles. And I had to giggle to myself, like, I am reciting poetry to Prince Charles right there in the front row. And it only seemed like yesterday that I was, you know, collecting aluminium cans at Dolphin Oval. So
that's magic, Rube. I can see in the background here, I've got Johnny's book. I've got a few of your poetry books. Yeah, Johnny Howard. I've got a few of your poetry books here too.
Well, geez, don't we need books at a time like this? And
correct.
If I took you inside my house here, there's books everywhere because my wife Kate is, you know, she's a book fanatic, and we have 4 teenagers in there as well, which is interesting at this kind of point in history. But yeah, they've been encouraged to do plenty of reading.
Yeah, if people get that love of reading, you know, they're never alone. And I'm so fortunate that, you know, I had read to my son when he was little, and he still loves reading. I FaceTimed him today because he's with his dad, and I said, "What are you doing, mate?" He goes, "I'm reading." And I went, "My job is done."
How good! That's a victory, right?
It is, mate.
My that poem, my Anzac centenary piece, which is a little bit different because 10 years later, you know, the Australian War Memorial asked me to write something for the centenary with green and gold malaria and a few of the others that I'll speak of is in my book, Jules, and here it is, Golden Soil.
I was about to say to you, you've got a new book out.
Well,
so
it kind of, you know, it seems like the right time just to introduce it into the attack. So
yeah, absolutely.
Golden Soil, and you know, I learned many years ago that when you roll the dice, you know, and you decide that we live in a country that allows solicitors the opportunity to retire and become poets, sometimes you can't be shy. You just have to let people know, you know, like that these things are out there and available. But I'm very proud of it. Like it's kind of a bit green and gold shiny there, isn't it? But it's my best of. It's my greatest hits album up to now. So since, you know, that early day when I first sat down and scratched out, you know, an ode to one of my heroes, in the 25 years since, I selected 32 of what I consider to be my best poems, which are inside Golden Soil. So anyway,
and they can go to your website, rupertmccall.com, is it .com.au? Yeah.
So that's my bookstore basically, and you know, God bless the modern world that you can write, publish, and promote all by yourself. So, yep, rupertmccall.com.au is where you'll find it. Thanks, Jules.
Yeah, well, you should be proud, mate. Now, apart from our wonderful war heroes, you've also paid tribute to sporting heroes like Roger Federer, Rod Laver, Don Bradman, Dawn Fraser, Greg Norman, John Eales, Julie McDonald, and I know that was only because my mum hounded you for that. Black Caviar, Winks.
She's a legend, Royale. If she watches this,
yeah, she is a
love
legend. And I'm grateful that she did, because she did up a blanket with all my old t-shirts. A quilt. That's right. Did a quilt, and she put your poem into fabric, and it hangs on my wall. So I'm very proud of that.
But, I remember that. 3 days.
Yeah. So I've seen your photos with Black Caviar, and you know, I wanted to be a jockey when I was a kid. So I love horses. So tell us a little bit about, you know, when you're preparing to do an ode to such greats like Roger Federer, who's, you know, literally what an incredible career, or you know, someone like Greg Norman. I've had the privilege of meeting Greg Norman. He's literally the only person I've ever met that had that incredible aura around him that was incredibly intimidating for some, you know. So what are the things you look for when you're doing your poetry and an ode to an athlete?
I look for that aura, right? Yeah, he does have an aura, the shark. And you know, a lot of those greats do. Another guy who I've been fortunate to meet, who, now that you mention it, reminds me of the same principle with that aura that just seems to kind of glow around him, is Andre Agassi. Andre has that also. But anyway, that's beside the point. The poems that I've written that pay tribute to my heroes is pretty much where it all started. So it's been a continuing theme throughout my journey. And I remember way back in the day, you know, when I was just taking off with this thing, I was invited to a dinner at Brisbane City Hall, and I was, you know, one of many speakers on the night. I can't recall exactly what it was all about. Laurie Lawrence was one of the speakers, but I sat down to dinner, and on my left was Nick Farr-Jones, and on my right was Alan Border. And I was, 23 years old, just a young fella, and I couldn't believe it. Like, I just thought, and these guys they're superheroes, right? Mm-hmm. And then I realised, I don't know, you know, it was like, oh, well, I'm sitting with them and they're just normal people, right? Like, they're good guys. You know, they're making me feel welcome. They're eating the same thing off their plates as I'm eating. And it was another one of those little, you know, perspective moments when you thought, well, Nick Farr-Jones and Alan Border, you know, once upon a time, they were just young boys, you know, dreaming of greater glories in their backyard, the same as we all did mostly. And so that was it was a good chapter in my life to realise that. But it didn't really, you know, detract from my instinct, you know, my want to pay tribute, like, to those inspirations, to honour the people, like, that gave us such, you know, great joy and those moments of Australian triumph. Mostly it was, you know, it was about that green and gold malaria, like, and that's just, you know, that shiver down the spine that we feel like when we see an Olympic gold medal, you know, or a Bledisloe Cup victory, or you know, when you're standing in an Anzac Day parade and the bugle plays. So, you know, that's been, I guess, one of the common threads over the years. The tribute to Roger Federer was a little bit different. Obviously, you know, Roger's is an international kind of icon, not so much, you know, an Aussie icon, but even though we all love him down here. So again, you know, like, when I was asked to pay tribute to Rog, it it blew me away. I just thought, man, how did it get to this? You know, what a great honour. And don't stuff it up, Ruth. Okay, like that's the thing. That's what's going through your head. You got to get this one right. You know, you get one crack at this. So you better make it a bloody good one. And then a week later, it was Tennis Queensland, because Federer was here for the Brisbane International. I think 2014-ish, around about then. And then a week later, they said, "Oh, hang on," because I'd already started, you know, writing and thinking what I was going to do. "Hang on, we've got Rod Laver as well." So the Rocket's going to be in the room. You can't leave the Rocket out. So it's got to be a tribute to Federer and Laver. I thought, oh God, you know, like if it wasn't challenging enough just to pay tribute to one legend, now I've got to put two in there and make sure it's an equal billing, you know, because they're arguably the two greatest tennis players that ever set foot on the earth. So anyway, I came up with the concept of a poem which I called the masterpiece, not because of, you know, what I wrote, but because of if there ever was that opportunity for Roger Federer to play Rod Laver in a game of tennis on that higher cloud, that's kind of the way that I framed it. Like it would have to be an absolute masterpiece. And I think, you know, for sporting stages, that for me is numero uno.
Yeah. You have an incredible
Because Roger's emotional, you know, I almost had him crying again. So, you know, you kind of like, you think, well, if you can make that emotional connection, you know, with the heart and soul of not only your audience, but your subject, well, then it's very rewarding. Job done.
Absolutely. You know, he's, you know, you have that incredible way, the way that you deliver things, that it does, you know, I get goosebumps every time I start hearing you, you know, it's a beautiful thing. So who, you know, you would have had sporting heroes when you were a kid that you looked up to. Who now, who do you look up to and draw inspiration from? Has that changed?
I think we should always have heroes. I guess, you know, I see it through the eyes of my boys and my kids, my daughter as well, Ella, Jake, Jim and Lockie. I encourage them to put posters on their walls. I think it's important, you know, that we still get out in the backyard, you know, and play a little bit of cricket or footy, and you know, have these dreams and, you know, aspirations of maybe one day, you know, occupying a stage, that all of that kind of stuff comes to fruition. That shouldn't change. I guess it's a good question. You know, my heroes growing up were guys like Alan Border, and I remember, you know, Bunny Pearce was the fullback for the Redcliffe Dolphins, and whenever the games ended back then, we'd all run out their autograph books, and Bunny, he played for Queensland before State of Origin, he wouldn't walk off the field until every last signature had been signed. Other guys signed a few and then, you know, head for the hot shower. But Bunny Pearce, he didn't leave until it was all done. And I think I've got his autograph about 36 times in my book. But those things, they make an impact on you, you know, and it stays with you. It stays in your blood. So it's a good question. Like, my heroes in recent times, I'm going to go a little bit like left field here, because as a writer, I suppose, and one who really appreciates, you know, the way that when you put something together like that, it can inspire people. You know, words, lyrics, music. So I'm a massive music fan, and thank God we've got that, you know, at times like this, because if we didn't have our music, I think we'd be in a darker place. But I just got so much time for Garamal, the Aboriginal singer who was blind at birth, learned to play the guitar upside down and back the front, and then kind of brought this a voice like from the angels, like, into the equation, that I believe is really, really like an important voice, you know, in Australian history. And I was at the airport one day and I saw Garamol with his mates, his minders, and I just had this kind of urge that I needed to go and tell him, like, how important he was to me and to a lot of people out there. And maybe, you know, he probably got that message from other people as well. But I just went over and said, Garamol, is it okay if I shake your hand? Again, that probably couldn't happen today, but it did then. And I just felt like this, you talk about the aura, right? I felt it through his handshake. And he's no longer with us, Garamol, but his music remains. And I encourage everybody who's listening out there that if you're going to, you know, download something on iTunes or Apple Music tonight, download that first album of Garamol and just soak it up, because it really is something very special. Yeah, he's my hero.
That is awesome. That's so good. Such great advice. So, Rupert, some of the questions that people have thrown at me that they'd love to know: peanut butter, Vegemite, or Promite?
Whoa. Okay, we can eliminate Promite. Now it comes down to a clash of the heavyweights.
I love Promite.
And for me, sorry, Jules.
It's okay. I'm looking for my autograph book. Ignore me. Anyway, here somewhere.
Are you looking for the Promite?
No, I'm looking for my autograph book.
I really love like a peanut butter sandwich on fresh bread.
Yeah.
So even though Vegemite, you know, kind of tends to take the iconic higher ground, myself, and there's plenty of Vegemite in the fridge, by the way, with all these mouths to feed. But yeah, I'll go the peanut butter.
And
crunchy.
do you ever add jam or banana to it, or honey?
I think we've done the honey before, not the banana. No way. What are you talking about?
Don't knock it till you try it.
Okay, well, yeah, now might be the time to try these things.
So Rip, do you have I remember a time I came over your house many moons ago and we played a murder mystery board game. It was great fun. We all dressed up when our friend Robbie was living with you.
Robbie, yeah.
Robbie Schneider.
I stay in touch with Rob across the ditch. He's
same.
doing well over there in Wellington, and yeah, he's one of my favourite human beings, Schneids.
Yeah. So tell me, what is your favourite family board game?
Gee, these are very relevant questions at the moment, but I'm as you may have guessed, you know, words kind of being my forte a little bit. There'll be no prizes in guessing that the Scrabble board is on the table and in fine form and great force at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And our last one, I'll leave you. Who would you like to meet, alive or dead, and why? I reckon there'll be someone super amazing, I reckon, coming from your mouth.
Bob Dylan.
Ah.
Yeah.
And why?
And I don't know how much longer he's got, Bob, because he's been around for a while. Most of the travelling Wilburys are gone. It's only Bob and Jeff Lynne, I think, who are still up there. But yeah, you know, I don't know if I'd be disappointed or not. I reckon that, you know, that Dylan's, you know, not the greatest kind of socializer, or he's a bit of an enigma. But his first album was a result of him when he found out that Woody Guthrie was sick and dying. He set out on this mission to find, you know, his inspiration, his hero, and he found Woody Guthrie in a hospital, wherever it was in America, and you know, and sat down for an audience, yeah, with Woody, and I don't know, I kind of had this crazy idea, you know, that at some stage in the not too distant future, I suppose, like if Dylan was crook and you know, in hospital somewhere, that I might, you know, try and set out, you know, and track him down and try and, you know, like have that conversation. I mean, it wouldn't happen, would it? Certainly not in the current environment, and probably not ever, because you know, his superstar status is probably too high. But yeah, I think you know, I'd love to kind of know what unlocks, you know, the genius of the thoughts of the mind that is Bob Dylan, someone like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so good. You know what, Rupert? I tell people that if they can see it in their mind, they can achieve it. And I think you never know where your reach can go. So if you want to do it, I'd do it.
I have these dreams, you know, like the best dreams I have is when I meet guys like that. And I've met Dylan like that. I've met Springsteen in a dream. I met Bono. I was actually in this dream, and you know, I love you too. But you two were playing, and they were like, I was speaking on the same stage next, so they were playing support for me. And,
I love it.
And I was kind of like, you know, getting ready to do my thing while the boys are out there playing, and on the side of the stage, and as I'm watching from the side on, like Bono realizes he's got the wrong guitar, so he's like trying to signal to me like to get the right guitar for him, and I didn't have a clue which was the right guitar, and so I woke up in a cold sweat. You know, I never got to perform on stage because I'd woken up, and I didn't find the right guitar either. But for what it's worth, and that's a little bizarre twist to the tale.
I love it. Rupert McCall OAM, you are a beautiful human. I'm blessed to call you one of my friends, and I just really appreciate your time today. Your contribution to this world is understated, and I think everybody should get online, order your book, and inspire the poetry in their family again.
The feeling is mutual, Jules. Thank you so much for the opportunity to have this wonderful conversation this afternoon. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Rup. You're amazing. I love you dearly. Thank you again.
Take care.